I call to order this meeting of the Warren County School Board for Thursday, February 12, 2015. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is to accept or modify the agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Community participation. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. May I say something about the personnel report without getting too emotional? We have our superintendent's retirement announcement in here, and that it's a bittersweet task to accept this personnel report. I'm very happy for Mrs. McGinnis, but I am very sad for all of us and the students and the staff in Warren County Public Schools. She has been a fabulous leader who is respected throughout the state, and they always say everyone's replaceable, but I never believed in that, and I know that she's not replaceable.
Thank you, Joanne. I think we all agree.
And I decided I better go ahead and make my resignation official, since you're all getting ready to interview for the next person, so probably a good idea before you start doing that, right?
It's timely.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Report, staff report, instruction report. Mr. Drescher.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you this evening. I'll apologize up front. My voice has been cracking a little bit, so if I start to choke, that's just because that's what's happening. This evening, I'd just like to share with you a little bit all of the assessments that we do with our students. I am sure you get comments on occasion as to why do we test these kids so much, and what do they all mean, and what do they all do. And so I thought it would be helpful to kind of go through the reasons we do all these assessments. So that's what this evening's instruction report is, and you can see the little subtitle there. Instead of there's an app for that, there's an assessment for that. So why do we assess? And primarily three reasons. One, we need information to plan for instruction. We need to know what our kids know. Two, we need information that helps us, and I'm talking about the teachers and administrators, know how good of a job we're doing with instruction. Assessments tells us that. And three, we need evidence of learning. And probably the most obvious one of that is like an AP test or an SOL test, things like that. This evening I'm talking about primarily two sets of assessments. Assessments that are required by the state of Virginia, and then assessments that we require in-house. I'm not talking about a lot of other assessments that we do and schools use, such as teacher-made tests, quizzes, things like that, or assessments that are part of programs and or textbooks. So I'm not talking about those. The first assessment that students run into when they enter our schools is PALS, Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening. It's a reading skills assessment. It's required by the state, and it's given to all kindergarten students and all first grade students. And to some students in second and third, depending on how they're doing on that assessment. It just helps us understand where they are in their phonological awareness, which is an important component of learning how to read. And there's a picture of what that assessment looks like. It's a one-on-one assessment, and students go through various tasks and teachers monitor it on the computer. That data is used, compiled to help us know how to help those students learn to read in a more efficient fashion. Math facts. This is new for us. It's given to students grades 2 through 7 3 times a year. And this is a way to monitor our instruction and student practice of basic facts: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And last year was our first year of doing this. And I'll just show you an example page of what we get from this. It's a little bit hard to see, I apologize. But this is a typical classroom, probably, I think this is a 5th grade class. And you can see students took 4 tests throughout the year. They did it 3 times. And so the start, middle, end, and so you can just pick on this Madison, the first student. At the beginning of the year, Madison got 73 out of 100 problems right in addition. By the end of the year, she was getting 88. Beginning of year, subtraction 58, 94, 15, 81 in multiplication, and then division 18 and 42. It's a way for us in a 4-minute drill how efficient our students are at just doing those basic facts. The reason we care about that, as students move up through the grades, mathematics becomes more difficult. And the facts become the tool that helps students figure other things out. The more brain power they're using to remember those facts, having to figure out, use fingers, things like that, keeps them from being able to do the other more in-depth computations. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Are these actual students and scores?
Yes.
Okay. There are only 2 instances, if I read quickly, where students went down. I think the 3rd child went down significantly. How can you explain that? If he had the skills in the beginning, after a certain amount of instruction, how can he lose those skills? It went from 73 to 58.
And here you're talking
For
about.
addition.
Right, for addition. I would have to find out some more information on that student. You know, he did great in the subtraction. He went up in the multiplication. He went up, and in the division he went up.
Yeah.
So
it's weird.
Can't explain that.
Okay.
So often in an assessment, that's what happens.
Well,
we need something else.
He
We
could
need
have had
some
a
other
bad day.
information. And he could have had a bad day. This is 3 days. Something that we've talked about several times here are our benchmark assessments. This is our assessment that we use in-house that monitors student learning of the actual content of a course. Every quarter, we give a benchmark assessment. If a course, like 3rd grade math, has an SOL test, they take 3 benchmarks: 1st quarter, 2nd quarter, 3rd quarter, and then the 4th quarter is the SOL test. If a course does not have an SOL test, then we give 4 benchmark assessments. So that's what we do. And we give benchmark assessments for every content that we teach. It's a very, very involved program. And we have lots of data. And I'll show you an example of one piece of data. This is an example of one of our schools at 5th grade. And you can see that we keep it over time, and that starting in 2009-10, we keep it all, but we only monitor 6 years of data at a time. First benchmark, this group of students had a pass rate on the benchmark of 95%, second benchmark an 84%, third benchmark was an 88%. And you can see that group of students that year did 94% pass rate on the SOL. What that benchmark did is helped us know our students were learning what they were supposed to learn as we went along. I see you looking ahead. Do you see the year that the math SOLs dramatically changed? Of course you do. 2011-12, much higher rigor, much higher expectation. Across the state, they just fell off. And we are very, very typical on what happened everywhere in the state with math. You can see, we did adjust our benchmarks. We did make some changes. Our students were still learning as we're going along. Putting it all together at the end on the SOL had a little more difficulty, but you can see how our benchmark is helping us. Over time, we're building back up, and I'm here to tell you, in a couple of years, we're going to be back up to where we were before. So that benchmark assessment helps monitor what we're doing as we're going along. Yes, ma'am.
If you look at 2012-13 and 13-14, where a first advisory 93 and 95%, and then they dropped down the 3rd quarter. So am I incorrect in assuming that the skills they're teaching in the beginning are review, And then toward the end of the year, they're getting into some real complex problems?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a good assertion. Okay. This assessment is a short timer. We've talked about this as well. The Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP. One of our concerns is making sure that our highest achieving students, our gifted students, are still achieving, still learning stuff. Many of the assessments the state does, and many of the assessments we have don't show us that, simply because so many of those kids are above it. So what we have done is for 2 years we've purchased this MAP assessment. And it's a computer-based and it's adaptive. So a student gets on this assessment, and it's for reading, math, and science, and they start taking the assessment if they're fifth graders, let's say. And as they answer questions, they get harder and harder and harder and harder. So we're able to check. We're doing this 3 times a year with our 3rd through 8th grade students that are identified gifted and talented, and then we've added some additional high achieving students to help kind of balance it out. We're going to have 2 years worth of data that's going to show us, are our gifted and talented students growing at a good rate? So we're going to know that information at the end of this year. And it's helpful to the students as well. They will get some information, but it's helpful to us because we're going to be able to tell, is our instructional practice with our highest achieving students working? And we're hoping that it is. We think it is for the most part. But in instances that it's not, we will have some data that says we need to make some adjustments. Perhaps and I'm making this up, that 7th grade science, let's say, we know, well, wait a second, we need to maybe up our skills here with those high achieving students because they already know all the stuff we're doing. So that's going to help us. We're doing it for 2 years, and then maybe down the road we'll do it again if we have to make any corrections. So it's an expensive test, and that's part of the reason we're not continuing to do it. And it is very involved.
But we've had 300 students each year
Yes.
participate in it.
Yeah. And students that started in 3rd grade, for the most part, it's the same students. They'll have taken it 3rd grade and 4th grade, and 5th grade and 6th grade. The only group that won't be the same students is that 8th grade group. So they'll have not taken it. So that's the MAP. And there's a picture of some of our young people taking the MAP test. They're very excited, you can tell. Universal screening, you'll remember a few years back we worked with Dr. Allison Cretlow at Ressie Jeffries to help us with reading. She introduced us to this, and I would like to say that probably it's a rare school division in the state that is not using a universal screening now. So that's kind of neat. We were kind of in on something that wasn't done throughout the state, but now is. A universal screening, as I walk through this, given to all students in kindergarten through 8th grade in reading, and we added last year math. And what it does is it monitors student skill development. It's telling us how well is our curriculum and instruction working. It's more about the teacher side of it than the student side of it. And I put that 80% as the goal, and you'll see why here in a minute. We use a program, it's called Ames Web. There are several different universal screeners. We give it the fall, winter, and spring, and some students are progress monitored 2 times a month. And there's an example of Ames Web being given. It's individualized in KN1, and teacher asks a variety of questions, and I'm going to show you some of those in a minute. And they're on the computer scores it, and then we have some data and information. Apologize, I'm going to have to walk over here now. In reading, we have 4 assessments in kindergarten and 1st grade. They're very short assessments, and you can read the names: letter sound fluency, letter name fluency, phoneme segmentation fluency, and non-sentence words fluency. Sounds real fancy. Fluency has to do with the rate. This is not about speed reading, but it's helping our students being able to name letters, name sounds, and be able to take those sounds apart within words. It's what research tells us, when students are able to do that really well, they're going to be good readers. And so we start monitoring this in kindergarten. And I just want to just show you, this is just a typical, please work. Yay. So what students are asked to do within I think it's a 1 minute or 2 minute drill, they are asked to just simply name the letter out loud. And the teacher keeps track of that. And there's a benchmark score that the average kindergartner at the middle of the year should be getting. And so that's what this test is. Very, very simple, but it gives a wealth of information in helping teachers know what it is that they should be working on with students. All right. There we go. Nonsense word fluency, the ability to take, where'd it go? There we go. The ability to take a meaningless word but still know what the sounds of the letters are. When students can do this, they really know letter sounds. So it's kind of an interesting, until we had run across this, it's not something I've been aware of, but students that do this very well are students that they're readers. They're ready to go.
Now, just a quick glance, they're all short vowel sounds. Is there a separate one with long vowel sounds?
This is probably, what does this say, Progress Monitoring Assessment 4. They change throughout the year, through kindergarten first. Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry. All right. There's the two other main tests. That's just kindergarten and first grade. They're very quick. Those are 1 minute tests. It takes just 4 or 5 minutes per student to do that. Then there are 2 main tests that we do with all kids, first grade through 8th grade, for the curriculum-based measure. Here again, this is a fluency thing. How quickly can students read a passage? So this is just a passage that's given, and I'll pull it up here. I know it takes a little minute, but it's interesting to see. This is an 8th grade passage, and we give it to an 8th grader. Teacher monitors their reading and just marks anytime there's an error and counts the number of words that they read within a time frame, usually about 2 minutes. That's a benchmark score. And based on that benchmark score, we're then able to know how efficient of a reader we have. So these are given starting in first grade, and they go all the way up through 8th grade. So those benchmark scores help us know how good of a job we're doing at teaching reading. And then there's one more in reading I'd like to show you, and it's called Maze. Maze is a very similar type passage, but what it is telling us, it's giving us a picture of how well students comprehend and how strong their vocabulary is. And you'll recognize, those of us in school may recognize having taken tests like this. Can't open. All right. Sorry about that. There it is. This is the answer key, just to show you what the test is. But you can see as you're reading along, you'll get to the second sentence, and suddenly there's a set of parentheses with 3 choices in it. The student needs to choose one of those words. They're measuring several things. One is how quickly is the student reading, how quickly they're able to choose one of those words and have it be the correct one. So students need to be able to understand and take meaning from text in order to put the right word in there. So it's a measure of comprehension, and it's a measure of vocabulary. So again, it tells us how good of a job we're doing with that type of instruction. I know I'm kind of talking quickly. That's our reading. So we have benchmark scores that go along. We do the same thing in math. I will not take our time to go through these, but it's the same thing. We ask students to count. How quickly can they count? We ask students to identify numbers. We'll give them a series of numbers. Can they identify them? This is kindergarten and 1. And then quantity discrimination measure, which simply is giving them 2 numbers and saying which one's bigger. So when students can do those tasks, they're well on their way to having good number and number sense to do higher mathematics. So it's been and then the missing number component too, sorry. Then there's 2 tests. Again, we give these tests to students, mathematic computation and applications. I will show you an example there. very typical math problems that we would expect students to be able to do. This is, I believe, 5th grade. There's a benchmark score. We're asking out of, I think it's probably 30 problems, students should be able to get X number of those correct by mid-year 5th grade. And based on that benchmark score, we know how good of a job we're doing in teaching those skills. And then the final one in math, so that make it work, is computation. And this, you'll recognize this is very typical, just math problems. And this is an 8th grade example. And I will tell you and get down to some of these, I'd be going, okay, help me out. But it's basic math skills that we expect our students to be able to learn. So what does this tell us?
Tells us we're glad we're out of school.
Tells me my granddaughter's smarter than I am.
Let me just show you a couple examples of what this data shows us. Reading in the spring of 2014, 74% of our 5th graders met their reading benchmark versus only 49% did when we started this program in 2012. This is helping us know what instructional components need to be stressed, and our students are getting better. So it's been a helpful thing. Another example, 59% of our 8th grade students met the reading benchmark last spring versus only 48% in 2012. Remember that 80% I put up there at the beginning? 80% is the goal. That's what when I'd stand before you and go, we have entered the promised land, all of our grade levels will be at 80%. Okay? Now that is where I hope to be standing in front of you pretty soon and saying that, but this is helping us get there. In most cases, the same groups of students are showing growth from year to year. I'm going to pull Ressie Jeffries out. The group of 2nd graders at Ressie Jeffries, 58 met their benchmark in reading in 2012. That same group of students in 3rd grade was at 62. That same group of students in 4th grade was at 60, I'm going to say 69. We look forward to seeing what they're doing in 5th grade. So we are making progress with our students because we have data that helps us know what skills each particular student needs to work on. Okay. Very quickly, the assessments that count, you will recognize that we give our students AP assessments, college placement assessments, the SAT and ACT, and the SOL. Those are the other ones. Picture of our students. We're not allowed to take any pictures of kids actually taking AP tests, but they're there all excited. You can see they're ready to take it. Just as a reminder, we gave well over 400 AP tests this past year. College placement, getting kids ready for LFCC. SOL, what does that have to do with SOL? To get ready for SOLs, many of our elementary schools do pep rallies. They bring in cheerleaders. They get the kids excited. They do little contests, pie eating contests. They love putting pie in Mr. Clark's face. So I didn't put that picture in. I should have. And then they're excited. They're ready to go. And we've had our pep rally, and now we're ready to take the SOL test. So it's a very typical room of, I believe that is A.S. Rhodes, maybe? No, Ressie Jeffries taking SOL tests. Here's a group of our high schoolers taking SOL tests. So, a lot of assessments. Are there too many? And I will honestly tell you, we talk about this a lot. We do not want to overemphasize assessment, but they are critical to helping us. And I put up 4 things that I believe that assessments are necessary for. In a formative measure, they help us know how students are learning along the way. If we didn't have something along the way, we wouldn't know how to make changes in real time. Assessment's necessary to give that final picture. The end of the unit, the end of the grading period, the end of the year. That's summative component of assessments. The big thing that I think they help us do is they help us plan and they help us know how good of a job we're doing with our instruction of students. So often, I would say that the assessment is more about the instruction that our teachers and staff are doing. Even though it does impact our students, it's how good of a job are we doing? And we really take it personally when our students aren't meeting the mark that we think they should. And this data guides our decisions on what we need to do to best meet all of our students' needs. So that's the impact of our assessments. I answer questions quite frequently on why we do all these things, and I hope that helps out a little bit on what it is we're doing. Wasn't exciting as some of the kid stuff we have coming here, so but I'll be happy to take any questions. But also, if you hear something about an assessment, you want more information, please ask. I'll get it to you personally, or if you would like it as a presentation, I do that as well. Yes, ma'am.
For those states who have embraced the Common Core standards, those assessments are in addition to what we do here in Warren County, Virginia.
They would replace the SOLs.
They would replace the SOLs.
Yeah. Yeah. The Common Core is another. The Common Core is actually the content that they would take, and then the state comes up with their assessment. But the people that have done the Common Core are giving the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So. We've looked at Common Core just because we want to know about it. Much of the SOL is very similar. I don't see a dramatic difference in terms of, are the kids in Virginia at a disadvantage not doing the Common Core? I personally don't feel they are. We have some data that we just got this week. The NAEP test, that's another, I didn't put it on here, but it's another test that's given to 4th and 8th graders nationwide. Based on the NAEP test, we are, the state of Virginia is above most other states in terms of quality of what they're doing with instruction. And in fact, in math, we're above Finland. Now that, and I don't know if you've heard, Finland's in the news forever on they're so much better than everybody else. And the state of Virginia, it's been, the test has been equated. And so, I don't know, I kind of bragging a little bit. That's all. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Drescher. I always enjoy these instructional reports. Superintendent reports.
I don't have anything tonight.
Mrs. Shrefko?
Yeah, my eyes are blurry after that. I wanted to commend, Mrs. McGinnis can help me out here. In January, we went to see the engineering projects for students in Project Lead the Way, right? So I wanted to, you were there, you would commend the students who presented their research projects to us. Very, very impressive. And also congratulations to the Warren County Wildcats for winning the Conference Wrestling Championship, and to both Warren County High School and Skyline for advancing 27 wrestlers to the East Regional Championships this weekend.
It's going to be tomorrow at New Kent.
Tomorrow.
I'm planning on going.
Okay.
I think we have 13 wrestlers from each school, 13 out of 14 possible.
Well, it said, the paper said 27 out of 28 advanced.
Okay, well, then okay.
Yeah.
Before, I'm sorry. I was going to say, before you move on, when you mentioned Project Lead the Way, the engineering students were the ones that presented their projects, but we did just get word, too, that the Warren Memorial Hospital Foundation has again been gracious enough to award in excess of $16,000 to the Project Lead the Way biomedical program, which allows us to do that fourth and final year. And we're forever grateful to the foundation to help us with that particular project and a lot of others. And I think the only money necessary for that biomedical course now is about $1,300 that we have to figure out.
That's great.
We can figure out $1,300.
Great. Mr. Wells?
Really nothing that Mr. Refko didn't already cover,
You
actually.
usually do the sports, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
Mr. Rosen?
No, I don't have any.
Mr. Boyle?
Well, the only thing I would say is, same as Mr. Refko, is I really appreciated the opportunity to speak to students, the engineering students at Skyline High School, and go over their projects and how deeply they are involved and how they want to move on and which schools they want to go to. And it was really a fascinating evening. And if you ever have the opportunity to go and see those projects and let the students describe them to you in the twinkle in their eye, it's really a neat project. So.
And the glaze in our eye because we don't know what they're really talking about. Right. And I really don't have a report. I am planning on going to New Kent High School down, I guess, east of Richmond tomorrow to see our wrestlers for both Warren County and Skyline.
Madam Chair, I did think of one thing and asked Ms. Shrevko, and I think we haven't taken the public opportunity to congratulate the academic bowl team from Skyline for their progress and their success this season. So we don't want to leave the academic side out when we talk about sports and achievements.
Absolutely. Thank you. Action agenda, presentations by staff. Authorization to advertise invitations for bids for service contracts. Mr. Riley.
Good evening. You have before you a request for us to go out for our service bids. We're required to do this periodically, and this is our year. These contracts can be renewed, for a year, for up to 5 years. That's the extent of the contract, and we're in our last year of our current contract, so therefore we have to go out to bid again. And we're just asking permission to do that, to advertise and see what we get. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has about them. Or
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion and since I'll read each thing off, that gives sort of an explanation of what we're asking for contracts on. I move that authorization be given to advertise for the following services for the 2015-2016 school year: elevator service, dumpster service, pest control, school auto bells, HVAC controls, LP gas, security monitoring, and number 2, heating oil.
Second.
And we'll be asking for those, but we can renew, once we get that bid, we can renew it for up to 5 years.
that's correct. Yes.
Every bid.
We only every contract is for one budget year. It doesn't exist until it's approved and brought before you again each year.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Riley. Approval of behavioral support lead coach stipends. Mr. Hirsch, he's so anxious to get up there.
Always, Madam Chairman, Madam Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Warren County Public Schools has been awarded, as you well know, a grant to implement positive behavioral interventions and supports. Warren County High School, Skyline High School, and our non-traditional programs have been working all year. We've been awarded the grant some time ago, and have been working all year to support this endeavor. As part of the grant, stipends are being asked for to support the leads, the coaches in each building. We catch students when they're being good, and we recognize it. Well, we're going to be catching staff when they're being good, and we're going to recognize it. And the dollars just started to come from the Department of Education. So I thought it a wonderful time to make sure that we could give those supports to our teachers. As part of the grant, the stipends are being asked for the leads, and the incentives are part of the grant and are only to be awarded as long as the grant is in existence. We want to keep our positive behavioral supports program going well after the grant is ended, but I'm only asking for these incentives, these stipends, during the grant cycle. And the grant would consist of $1,000 per coach at each school. Do you have any questions?
Well, after reading through the proposal, I was wondering how your presentation tonight ties into Mr. Johnston and Mr. Rimmel's presentation at a previous school board meeting.
They're very closely tied in together. As I said, we were awarded the grant quite some time ago, and the schools, they just took off running. They're very motivated. And Mr. Rimmel and Mr. Johnson, are, just like the other buildings that have been identified, have hit the ground running, and they're looking not necessarily to change a culture, because we already have a positive culture in all of our schools, but we're trying to enhance a culture. And again, catch kids being good, catch students being good, because there's most of them, if not all of them, are being good, and we just want to recognize it. So it ties in very closely. They're just extra motivated.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hirsch?
I move that the $1,000 stipend for positive behavioral support lead coaches in each building be approved.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Authorization to advertise public hearings for fiscal year 2016 budget. Mr. Ballantyne.
Good evening. The Code of Virginia requires that school boards hold at least one or more public hearings at least 7 days prior to the adoption of their budget, the budget that they would present to their Board of Supervisors. Notice of such public hearings shall be given at least 7 days in advance of the public hearing and advertised in a newspaper having general circulation in that locality. We're recommending that you hold this public hearing for the fiscal year 2016 budget at your next meeting, which will be February 26th, 2 weeks from tonight, and that contrary to normal practice, that second meeting of the month be held here in the County Government Center meeting room so that it can be televised and for the public information from that. Had your Director of Finance not let it slip by, this would have been done at a meeting earlier, this request, so that you could have done it tonight. That's been our practice. Things slipped by and we didn't get it on the agenda last meeting to advertise it for this one. So that's why we're asking you to do that. There are some other items on the agenda for the next meeting that would be good to have a televised meeting anyway, none the least of which of those is recognizing our school board members for School Board Appreciation Month. So if it's okay, we would ask your approval to advertise that public hearing be held at the meeting on the 26th, and that meeting be held here in this room and again be taped for televising.
Will that still be a 5 o'clock
Well,
meeting, or
it
will we
probably
be doing it
shouldn't
at
be.
7?
That would be up to you. I think it could be, certainly it would meet the letter of the law to have it at 5 or whatever time you choose, but if you were more comfortable having it available for the public to attend at 7, then that certainly could be a consideration, and you could do that too.
I mean, with people working, I think
Right.
giving them the opportunity, they may choose not to come, but at least make it available for people who work during the day.
I think that's probably would be to your advantage to do that.
Move it to
Now,
7.
we will be
Move it to
having
7.
a work session
Right.
that same evening on the budget. You may want to start that at 6 o'clock. We could
Okay.
meet next door here, and then at 7 come over here for the formal part of the meeting to have that public hearing and all, and then not be here quite as late in the evening if that's meets your...
I don't believe that we would need to start at 5 for the work session part, but as Mr. Ballantyne said, to start at 6 and then come in here at 7. And I just want to, if nothing else for Mr. Rosen's benefit, the way we have normally worked our public hearing for budget is that we allow the public to have the opportunity to have input before we actually put a budget together and present it. In a lot of cases, a director or somebody will have a budget in place and present it, and people will respond to it. But I think the intent of the law really is to have public input into developing a budget as opposed to responding to a budget. And that's why we don't, it's pretty open-ended where people can come and say what they believe needs to be in our budget.
Okay, is it okay with everyone on the board to meet at 6 then instead of 5?
With the understanding that the public hearing would be
At 7.
at 7 in this room.
Okay.
Right.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
That was easy. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Presentations by superintendent, approval of scholarships.
As you see in your board packet, we have a request from 3 different either individuals or groups to establish scholarships. One request from Dr. Craig Zunka and Mr. Joe Gillette to establish a $1,000 scholarship. A request from Skyline High School PTSO to establish a $100 scholarship, and a request from Mr. Joe Ortiz to establish a $500 scholarship. And if you notice on the back of the cover sheet, it explains what those scholarships are. The Gillette Zunka Scholarship for Math, Science, and Technology. Dr. Zunka and Mr. Gillette would like to establish a $1,000 scholarship to be given to a graduating senior from either Skyline High School or Warren County High School. The scholarship would be presented annually to a senior going into a career of math, science, or technology. The Skyline High School PTSO and Community Service Scholarship. Skyline High School PTSO would like to establish a scholarship for $100. There are some other caveats with that, but that pretty much explains it. And Joshua J. Ortiz, Class of 2015 Football Scholarship. Mr. Joe Ortiz would like to establish a $500 scholarship to be given to a graduating senior from Skyline High School who has been accepted to a college or university to play football. The scholarship will be given for 5 years, 2015 through 2019. And we ask that you approve these scholarships so they can be awarded.
Someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that the above scholarships be approved as requested and accepted with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And we thank everyone for coming forward for the scholarships.
I think you may see some more before
Can I make a public
this time.
service announcement?
Sure.
Having to put up with, live with guidance counselors. Let me urge every parent out there to stay on top of their children. We have a huge number of scholarships each year presented by members of the community, by organizations, by anything up to and including our armed services and our colleges. And in most cases, it takes a very simple application. And each year, many of these organizations don't have a huge number of applicants to choose from. So please, students, please, parents, get applications, find out what scholarships are available, which ones you might qualify for, which ones you might be interested in, and fill out the application and fill it out on time.
And in many cases, the information you put on one scholarship will, easily transfer to the other ones.
Well, one of the fortunate things that we have here is both of our guidance departments have developed a general scholarship application.
Oh.
And they use the same one at both schools, and a lot of the organizations that give scholarships just use that particular information on that application to choose their recipients. There are a few scholarships that have their own specific applications, but a lot of them do use the generic one that everybody can fill out. And it has a lot of information on it
But
that's very useful to anybody.
Is it the student who chooses where that general application, you know what I'm saying? If there are 10 scholarships out there, does the student say, I want this to go to these 10?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah, being a member of the Rotary Scholarship Committee, that form is extremely helpful, as we use that. Then we do a couple of other things, but
Madam Chairman, as much as I appreciate Mr. Rosen's very succinct motion on the public hearing, and I do, I did want to specify that the last portion of it says if that meeting must be canceled on February
Thursday.
26th at 7 p.m., that the public hearing will be held the following Thursday at the same time in this room, at 7 p.m. the following Thursday, only because someone might be listening tonight and may not know that again. So,
Which would be March the 5th.
It would be March 5th.
March 5th.
but thank you for the terse motion. I appreciate it. Trying to get the vocabulary
Accept the
words out
amended
there
motion.
Yeah, old
Yeah.
SAT words out there.
The advertisement in the paper for the public hearing will give that as the rain or snow date, I guess it would be
Yeah.
in this case.
Weather date.
Yeah, weather date,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Acceptance of donation.
As you can see also in your board packet, HP Hood LLC has donated a conference table to the 15th Street Building Library, where we have a professional development room. And as you can also see, Mrs. Shepherd has written a thank you letter to HP Hood. I understand Mr. Drescher has actually he went over and looked at the table, and it's a very nice conference table that we can use in our professional development room.
I move that the donation of a conference table by HP Hood LLC be accepted with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Potential topics for February 26th regular meeting. Do I need to read those, or you all can read those over? And then there's the March 27th, 2015 VSBA Hot Topic Conference in Wytheville. And if anyone is interested in attending that, please let Mr. Valentine know. Did you want to say something? You had a...
No.
Oh, okay.
I was paying attention.
Any other business? Okay, we need to go into closed session.
This motion is made that this open public meeting of the Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matters in a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A2, discussion or consideration of admission or disciplinary matters or any other matters that would involve the disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record concerning any student in Warren County Public Schools, specifically the request from one family for release from compulsory attendance pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.1-254.b and Section 2.2-3711A1. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of an employee of the school board. Be it resolved that the School Board of Warren County does hereby authorize discussion and closed meeting of the matters identified herein.
Second.
Mr. Valentine, please call roll.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Boyles,
Yes.
Mrs. Sharefko,
Yes.
Mr. Rosen,
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Motion carries. We are in closed session.